I'm talking to Dr. Phil. You guys, you can check drphil.com for local listings. Your interview with Ukrainian Orphan airs today. I am the buzz about within my community. We're like, oh my God, he's got the orphan on. So tell me what you can about today's episode. I don't know if it's today. What is it? Which day?
It's today.
It's today. Okay.
Yeah, it's today. Look, I don't know if people have seen the movie Orphan. Did you ever see that movie?
I don't think
so. It was a movie about some people that had adopted someone from Europe, a European country, and they thought she was a teenager, like 14 years old. As it turns out, she was 30, tried to seduce the husband and kill the wife. And so that's what got people interested in this story to begin with, because it was the same storyline. And this family said, okay, they went over and adopted this girl, and they thought they were adopting a 6 or 8 year old Ukrainian dwarf. And that is the right term. That's not a pejorative term. That is the correct term. And they said they got over here and they thought, as it turned out, that she was a 20-something and was trying to kill them all, was terrorizing the family. Said they wake up in the middle of the night and she's standing there with a butcher knife. Now, she's like 2 feet tall, so it's like a Chucky doll standing there with a butcher knife.
It seems impossible when you say it.
Yeah, but no. And they said she tried to poison the mother by putting bleach and stuff in her coffee that she was drinking, tried to push her into an electric fence and kill her when they were out near a cattle farm and that sort of thing. And so they started thinking, this is not a child. And they ultimately went to court and had her re-aged, had her declared 22, put her in an apartment, paid a year's rent, gave her a book of food stamps, and they moved to Canada.
Come on, Dr. Phil. And first of all, let me back this up. How did the court re-age her to 22? Who did that?
You got me by the tail. I do not know. Now, I assume they got some doctor to say, based on some bone density or something, they had some basis for making the claim. But they put her in an apartment, and seriously, she's like 2 feet tall. She couldn't reach the counters. She couldn't get the refrigerator open. She had fun for herself. And think about this. If she was 8, I've got a granddaughter that's about that age. I can't even imagine leaving her in an apartment at 8 years old. Here's some food stamps, and they stock the refrigerator with some stuff, and bye. Wow. And in a foreign country, and if you are 8 years old, and if you're not 8 years old, maybe let's say you are 20, you're still fighting all of these physical challenges.
Right.
And they leave her because they say she's killing her. And so they agreed to do the interview, and they said, you've got to be, this is a very sensitive family, and she's very sensitive about this, so you got to ease into it. I'm not much for that. My first question was, so are you a psycho killer dwarf? Are you trying to terrorize and cure this family?
Of course that's your question. That's why we love you, Dr. Phil.
And I just figured I'm going to get it asked. If she says they may leave, I'm going to ask it first, get it out of the way.
I bet you she laughs.
She just died laughing.
Yeah.
She said, no, I'm a dwarf, but I'm not a psycho killer. She said no. But it's a very strange situation, because at the time I interviewed her, if the court was right, she would be now 30. And there's no way this girl's 30. No way she's 30. You've probably seen the promos on it.
I did.
There's no way she's 30. But my theory is, I don't think she knows how old she is. She came from a group home in the Ukraine. It's not like they have birthday parties for all those kids.
You're right. She probably doesn't
know. How
know.
do you know how old you are?
Exactly.
You don't have any papers. Nobody celebrated your birthday.
That's right.
And if you're 6 or 8 and you're one of like 100 kids in a room, hell, you don't know how old you are.
Exactly. And there was a family down the street from where this supposed 8-year-old was living, but that took her in and said she still had baby teeth.
Right. But the family that had her originally said that there were signs of a menstrual cycle and that she had secondary sexual characteristics. So
maybe she could have been 12 or 14.
I mean, who knows? And there's more to the story than meets the eye, because since she came to America, she had been with almost 30 families.
Really?
And in some of those families, there was a history of violence.
Oh my God, the plot thickens.
It does.
I know you can't give anything away because we're going to have to watch, but were you getting the heebie-jeebies from her?
Well, I'll say this. There are some things that are not characteristic of what you would expect. She's very sophisticated. She's very sophisticated. And when she starts giving explanations of how she got where she is, she has some very layered conspiracy theories.
Oh.
And it's not the kind of thinking you would expect from somebody for whom English is a second language and is in her teens.
Right. Why didn't the original parents, though, go to the police and say, this child that we adopted is trying to kill us, and I don't think she's the right age? Why didn't they go to authorities?
Well, they did. They went to court.
But they go to the police to say, can you investigate or do something?
Well, of course, they don't have any. They don't have any evidence because, I mean, what do? You wake up at night and somebody stands into your bed with a butcher knife. Then the next day, I mean, they're not still standing there. It was, and you take this little person down there and you say, this is a psychotic killer, and they go, really? She's not up to your knee. Can you not step out of the way? What's the issue here?
Right.
People didn't take them seriously.
Did they try to take her to a therapist at all?
You know, they say they did everything they could to fold her into the family, but they felt like, enough's enough and too much is too much.
Right.
And so they drop her off and they moved to Canada.
You do say one thing which I appreciated, which is no matter what, she's still a human being that needs love.
Well, that's the thing. You know what where the bottom line is in this for me? When you adopt a child, that's your child, the same as if you gave birth to it at the hospital. And I didn't know there was a window where you could go and turn them in.
I didn't know that either.
I mean, this is your child. If you adopt a child, it's your child. So you don't send them back.
No.
If they're misbehaving, if they're acting out, so deal with it.
It's so wrong. Did you talk to that family?
No, they won't talk because they're under indictment. They're under indictment for abandonment of a child and endangering a child. Some charges like that.
I mean, as they should be.
And I don't know exactly the charges, but that's basically it. And so I wouldn't talk if I was them either, because they might incriminate themselves.
Right. I mean, I always like to say, okay, let me put myself in their shoes, I mean, do you blame them? But yes. I mean, I think the road they took, I understand their fears and their concerns, and they're worried about their other children getting murdered in their sleep. But it's a heavy-duty story, and I'm glad you're covering it.
It is, and I ask a lot of questions that I'm really interested in hearing from people after they watch the show to see what they think, particularly mothers, what they think about how old this child is, how sophisticated she is, if they believe she's a teenager or she's an adult. Because if she was 22, she would now be in her 30s. If she was 8-ish, she would now be like 16. So I'm really interested in hearing what people think.